Hey, what's up? Thanks for checking out the Selah Leaders podcast. My name is Nick Newman, and I am here today with our podcast guide, Darren Zook.
What's going on? It's season 3.
Come on.
I wasn't sure if we'd get to this point.
No.
I mean, like we end our year. Well, we do our calendar is just different for this podcast.
Yeah.
We ended our year back in December, almost the end of December, and we said, hey, we'll pick up in season 3 in February. Yeah. And here we are, like almost the end of February, and we were like, hey, we need to sit down and record an episode because we just weren't sure if we were going to get it out in time.
Well, not only that, but like I'll be honest, with my attention span, this is the longest running podcast I've ever done. I've started 2, maybe 3. And they only had 1 season apiece, right? So I'm more of a mini series guy than maybe a podcast guy, mostly just because of attention span and stuff like that. But man, it is such a cool thing to be in season 3. Yeah, we're going to be in 3 years of doing this together now, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great, and I think it's really cool too because. I know for me, there's lots of leadership wisdom and nuggets that I get from you on a regular basis. But to see some of the things too that we've heard from other pastors, just about, simple things like handling conflict or, having hard conversations, or, hey, even planning out what does next year look like. Yeah. Those are some of the topics that we've been able to uncover and go through. So it's been really cool.
Yeah. Probably one of the coolest things is just watching how God's not only been growing us through this, but he's been growing Selah Leaders as a whole. And, we've had this podcast for a little while, and we're super excited to announce that we have an official sponsor.
Come on. This is awesome.
Sponsor of the Selah Leaders podcast. They are some great friends of ours at WIF, the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. Yeah. They do investment accounts and church loans, and they serve with us for our lead pastor getaways. They host those and help cover the costs for pastors to get rested and healthy. And they are one of my favorite partners because we've even parked as a church, and my wife and I personally have money that is with them, and it's growing the kingdom, which is what it's all about. Yeah,
it is. And I mean, and my wife and I also, we're partnered with them, and it is really cool because, you rather than taking your personal hard-earned money and putting it into, investing in with a bank where, hey, I don't necessarily know where my dollars are going to be spent and what they're going to be spent on. Here we get to know that they're planted in the kingdom, that we're planting churches and ultimately helping grow God's kingdom through the local church.
Yeah. So if you're looking for that kind of stuff, the Wesleyan Investment Foundation is going to be a great resource for you. We'll link them in the description, or do we do show notes? I don't know
if we do show notes, but maybe we can figure out for this episode how to do like one of those little things in the corner.
Oh, nice. Little, So Darren is going to do that.
We're going to make an attempt at it.
Yeah, come on. It's going to be a great time. So we're going to kick off this first episode of season 3 talking about, I think it's one of my favorite topics because it's one that I live out personally. It's the topic of radical honesty.
Yeah, it could be an uncomfortable topic for some.
Yes. I will say before we dive too deep into the conversation on radical honesty, I do think it comes easier for some people than it does others. Yeah. Like some people are, me as an individual, I'm a little more direct and straightforward and to the point. So radical honesty comes a little easier for me, but
not me.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, so I'm one of those people who I generally lead with some of the logic, but also emotion as part of it. Yeah. And so I'm a very logical, logistical thinker in general, but I'm also a very emotional person. Yeah. And so I think for me, it is everything that I say, whether it's, in telling the truth or whether it is just in conducting myself day to day, it's, hey, how are other people going to respond to this? Yeah. And how do I be clear but also be nice, because it's something that I like to be.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like I'm the opposite of that, because that just feels rude, but I'm pretty much the opposite of that, right? Some of that has just come with time and leadership of like trying to do that, trying to like really carefully make sure that I'm not hurting somebody's feelings, but then you end up skirting around the problem. And over the years, I've really learned that like one of the kindest things you can do for somebody is be honest with them, because it is the only thing that really preserves and protects the relationship for the long run. So like radical honesty is being honest in the little things and the big things. It's a gift because it's what helps build relationships, strengthen teams, and ensure that morale is on the right track.
Yeah, no, that's good. So unpack this for us. Like, when you think about radical honesty and you begin to dive into this topic, what are some key points and takeaways for this?
Yeah, I think the first one is that like honesty builds trust, because without it, nothing lasts.
Yeah.
When you and I are honest, trust is formed and developed. Trust is going to be one of those cornerstones in leadership.
Yeah.
I would say that trust is like the bottom of the Jenga tower that you're building, right?
Yeah.
Because without trust, it really limits your capacity to lead people. If people will only follow you as far as they trust you, then trust is going to be absolutely crucial and necessary for you and I to lead people effectively. And when you and I are honest with them, it actually builds trust even greater on the long run. I think sometimes when we try and like just protect everybody's feelings, or, even in leadership, like, I used to have a pastor who I call him crap sandwiches, right? Like he would walk into my office and he would tell me one thing he loved about me, like one thing he hated, and then another thing he loved, and then he would leave. And I would always be like, dude, if you'll just come in and deal with the issue, it'll actually help build trust more. Because then what I learned as a leader was if he ever gives me a compliment, I have to wait. Because he'd give me a compliment, I'd be like, all right, but like, tell me where I suck. Tell me the horrible thing. Because I learned over time not to trust his word. Jesus says in Matthew 5:37, like, let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? Like this idea of, if I'm going to be radically honest with you, I'm giving you a gift, because that gift is going to build trust. And so as you look at your organization, like one of the things I'd encourage you with is to be really honest, be truthful, be clear, stop sugarcoating things, because your attempt to protect someone's feelings is actually harming your relationship, and it's hindering your organization. Truth spoken with love, and we'll unpack that a little more in a few minutes, is what builds long-term trust for you and other people.
Yeah, that's good. And I think the biggest thing I take away from that is, like, again, we're speaking the truth in love, but it doesn't mean we're sugarcoating it.
Yeah, 100%. The second thing I think is that honesty creates a culture of accountability. One of the hardest parts of leading people is that you are still human in life, right? Like, you're still a person. You have faults, you have flaws, there are things that you don't get right. Sometimes it's in the big things, but a lot of times it's in the little things. It's in the little conversations that you have that don't go well. It's in the messages that you send that came across wrong. And honesty is not just what you deliver to other people. I think you're in a bad position as a leader when the only time you're honest is when you feel like others haven't gotten it right. But when you want to be honest to create a culture of accountability and even vulnerability, you're honest when you don't get it right. Like, you come to the table dealing with the fact that you have weaknesses and you have issues and you've made some mistakes. And so I think it's really important for us as leaders to get honest, because it helps create the culture of our team where accountability and authenticity can thrive.
Yeah.
I am not a perfect leader. Like if you're listening to this and I have the privilege of being your pastor, I make mistakes, right? Like I'm not a perfect individual, but when I get it wrong, I want to make sure my team knows they're not going to have to wait for me to come around and address it.
Sure.
Like when I get it wrong, I'm going to come deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think anytime that we're working on creating and establishing culture, or influencing the culture within our team, there is no better way to start than having an open and honest culture that's creating accountability. And what better way to ultimately influence that than being the one who is the standard bearer, who is the one who is showing it to the team.
100%. We're leaders. We lead the way.
Yeah.
And we lead the way in authenticity. We lead the way in being honest with other people. I think it's honesty when you get it wrong, but it's also honesty that breeds accountability when other people don't get it right, either. A lot of times we ignore problems. Every small problem you're currently ignoring will become a big problem you have to deal with later.
It's true.
It's like the tire pressure light, in my car. I've ignored it from time to time. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, why am I on the side of the road? Well, it's because what you don't address, you end up accepting. Another way a leader says it is what you don't correct, you condone, or even what you allow, you endorse. And so as a leader, if I'm not willing to have the hard conversations and deal with those things, I'm creating space for more and more things to go wrong on our team.
Right.
And I've sat as a second chair leader before going, I know my pastor, my boss knows this is a problem. Why won't he deal with it?
Yeah.
Why won't he address it? And maybe you avoiding a conversation is actually harming your leadership credibility, because people are losing their ability to follow you because you won't have the honest conversation.
That's good.
About what needs to be addressed.
That's good. What else you got?
The third one is that honesty strengthens relationships. It strengthens relationships. So why is radical honesty important? Because it makes your relationships stronger. Fake unity is not unity.
Right.
For your relationships to thrive, you've got to be honest with people. And especially in relationships where you are the leader and they are serving you or working for you, it's exhausting to work for a leader that you do not trust their words.
Yeah, that's a true statement.
Right? Like when you go to work and they're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Like you never know which one of them you're going to get.
Right.
Or you can see that they're emotionally off and you go, are you okay? And they go, yes, I'm fine. And then they walk into their office and slam the door.
Yeah.
You're teaching your employees to no longer trust your words.
It's true.
Because what you've said on the outside is not reflective of what's going on the inside.
Right.
Now, I don't think that you have to let them into every one of those situations. Like, I've walked into your house before, whether it's been for a podcast. Actually, it was for a podcast.
It was one for a podcast.
We ended up addressing it in real time. I think it was the one we did on authenticity versus transparency. And you were like, hey, man, are you good? And I said, hey, man, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And you know that if I'm not going to lie to you.
Right.
If there's ever a time where you go, hey, how you doing? And I go, man, I'm not good. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
If I don't have the ability to address it or talk about it, I'm going to just change the subject.
Right.
Right. Or I may say, hey, I'm not, but I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I got a message during a meeting the other week where apparently I was showing a little attitude on my face. And one of my team members said, "Hey, are you good?" And I sent them a message back that says, "No, but I'll be fine. Give me a few minutes." And so I think the honesty that you have with people is really important because it does help build and foster the relationships that you have.
Yeah.
No one should have to carry the weight of walking on eggshells around you.
It's true.
Or wondering which version of you they're going to get.
Right.
And I think that radical honesty is what helps facilitate that, right? Radical honesty allows you and I to not have to apologize because we lied to somebody on the front end, because we weren't willing to actually do the hard work of being real with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the other things I think about too, and this is something I know you and I have talked about, is when you think about just being honest with each other and building relationships with one another. Sometimes I think we beat around the bush or we sugarcoat things because we are so concerned about feelings.
Yeah.
The reality is like we all have feelings and our feelings are real. Like when it comes to, there was a conversation you and I had a while back where it's like, I told you how something made me feel. You didn't discount my feelings. Yeah. You were like, hey, like I understand that you feel the way you do, but here is the reality of the way I see it. And like, you were still open and honest about, hey, this is the reality of the way you see it, but it doesn't change the fact that I feel a certain way.
Yeah.
It didn't take away from the relationship. If anything, we grew deeper because of the fact that we were honest with one another, and it was brutal honesty to a degree.
Yeah. I don't trust relationships where there's no conflict. Like, Tori and I were in a premarital counseling session with somebody, with a couple the other week, and they were like, "Well, we just never fight." I was like, "Well, that's not true. You do fight, but at some point in your life, you believe the lie that having an argument with a significant other was an indicator of unhealth. So now you're just unwilling to call it a fight,
right?
Because you believe it's a sign of unhealth, when I think actually a sign of maturity in relationships is not that you don't fight, it's that you fight well.
Right.
It's that you know how to have the hard conversations and wrestle through the tensions of multiple imperfect people doing life together. Like, we're going to have conflict.
Yeah.
How we deal with that conflict really determines the health of our relationship.
That's good.
Oftentimes we feel like avoiding a hard conversation with somebody is a means of keeping peace. It doesn't. It kills peace.
Right.
It removes your ability to connect with those people.
Yeah.
The people you're avoiding a hard conversation with right now are not people you're just going to dinner with and chilling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because internally, your insides are freaking erupting.
Yeah.
Right? Internally, you're going, I want to kill this person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't go to dinner with them.
Yeah.
But you're going, it'll keep the peace if I don't deal with it. Who's at peace?
Right.
Right now,
neither of you are at peace.
No, now inside you're at war, and because we don't have the capability as individuals to actually fake it to the degree we do, you think you're keeping peace and you're not addressing it and everything's fine, but you've been treating them like crap for 4 weeks, and they're going, "What did I do to this person?"
Right.
Something had to happen. Things are different. Yeah. Something feels off. You've got to have the hard conversation. It's absolutely necessary.
That's good.
And then the last thing that I've got is that honesty fuels team morale, because fake wins lead to real losses. And so one of the things that I like about honesty is that it allows you to be fully transparent with what is a win and what is a loss. Mm-hmm. I always say data doesn't lie.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite statement in this last season, because pastors get accused of, doing pastor math all the time. And pastor math is where, it's almost like when Jesus fed the 5,000, right? He only had a few fish and some bread, but then boom, 5,000 people showed up, right? So pastor math are those, when somebody asks you, how many people attend your church, you give them the Easter numbers, right? No. That many people showed up for one Sunday. That's not your average attendance or an accurate reflection. But data doesn't lie. And so I look at data all the time, and I look at trends, and I look at metrics, and I think one of the greatest things you can do for your team is be honest about how things are actually going, what you're actually doing, what you're actually accomplishing. If we don't know what a win looks like on the front end, we'll fool ourselves into thinking it's working on the back end. And it really makes a big difference for us to be honest and transparent about, like, did we actually win?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for us, it's not about just pulling off a good Sunday.
Right.
Like, as a church, are people actually getting involved in groups? Are they actually serving? Are they taking steps that would indicate, based on the metrics that we have, that they're becoming more of a fully devoted follower of Jesus?
Yeah.
I'm not interested in building an audience. I want to equip an army. And so if pastors easily get fooled at times into going, well, like, hundreds more people showed up, we're good.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, if they're not taking any steps, like, we packed a room, but are we actually packing heaven? Because those are two very, very different things. And so I think as you're having honest conversations, teams thrive when leaders tell the truth about what's working and what's not working. I don't ever want my team to feel like I'm the only one that doesn't realize it's not going well.
Right.
So being a person that looks at data and some of those drivers and metrics is helpful in that.
Yeah.
So get honest and listen. Let me just encourage every pastor or leader right now that is not honest. The data is not a reflection of who you are. Sometimes the reason why we don't get honest about things like attendance, or we don't get honest about, like, how things are going, is because we've not spent the time to wrestle through our own insecurities of dealing with the fact that what we do is not who we are. But being honest about that, I can go, listen, whether I've got 300 or 200 or 500, I am a son of God. I'm Nick Newman. I'm going to get on that stage and preach. There's times every year in our church where I quit looking at attendance numbers. And here's when I know. Yeah. Here's when I know I need to quit looking at attendance numbers. When I look at the report and go, dude, I can't believe. Did the rapture happen? Did I get left behind? Was it a Thanos Sunday where, boom, snap, half the people disappeared?
Yeah.
When I start thinking like that, I always know it's time for me to put it away, because if those are going to be the things that influence my joy, like, what am I going to be, happy if it's high but sad when it's low?
Yeah.
Well, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Regardless of how many people showed up this Sunday, I'm showing up next Sunday.
Yeah.
So honesty allows me to go, like, hey, listen, not a lot of people in our church are showing up right now. This is the first time in the history of our church where there's the flu going around and stuff like that. It lasted a little bit longer. This is like one of the first Januaries that hasn't been higher than it has been, like, year over year. Outside of COVID, it was always like last year's numbers were higher than this year's numbers. That wasn't the case currently. But here's what I know. I'm looking at how many people are serving, how many people are in groups and all that stuff. And once people are done being sick, all the other data drivers are indicative of some great healthy growth that's on the way. I don't have to lie about what attendance looks like right now just to make me feel better about it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So honesty builds trust. Honesty creates a culture of accountability. Honesty strengthens relationships. And honesty fuels team morale.
Come on.
Honestly, hey, I see what I did there.
Come on.
But no, I think, at the end of the day, like, we all want to make sure that we are representative of Christ and representative of the integrity that ultimately we know He empowers us to demonstrate. And there's no better way to lead the way than with honesty in everything that we do.
100%. And we're shifting some things in season 3 this year. If you got listener submitted questions, feel free to kick them over and drop them. We're happy to do those. But really, I want to always leave with, like, a closing thought and a next step for you to take.
I love it.
And so the big closing thought is that radical honesty is not about being harsh. It's about being holy. Your integrity as a leader matters.
Yeah.
And whether it's in the big things or the small things, if you're not being honest about something, there is a gap between what you're doing and who God has called you to be.
Yeah.
And so this week, my challenge for you is to ask yourself, what is one conversation or one thing that I need to be honest about? And then go do it.
Come on.
Go have the conversation. Go have the talk with that coworker. Go back to that person that you wronged and get real with them. Take that next step. I guarantee you, it'll be a game changer for your leadership.
Love it.
Well, hey, thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode, or this month's episode, season 3, episode 1. This outro could not have gone any worse, but we are so grateful that you chose to be with us. Thanks so much. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, comment, share, all those things. We're so grateful that you tuned in, and we'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this month's episode of the Selah Leaders Podcast. Darren and I are so grateful that you chose to spend some time with us today to check it out. But do us a favor, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share it with a friend, family, or another leader in your life. It would truly make a huge difference.
Yeah, and if you'd like more information, jump over to selahleaders.com.